Okay guys, this is Brian back here again with part 2 of how to switch from Canon to Sony. So today's review isn't really going to be a technical review. I'm going to show you some screenshots and I'm also going to show you some cool B-roll of the camera itself. I was watching some other videos before I bought this camera, and a lot of times I kind of feel that some of the videos don't really have the emotional aspect of the camera. It's more of like technical side, and that's all great. I know this camera performs amazingly, but I want to show you guys a more emotional and like a tactile feel of it. So there's gonna be some cool B-roll of this stuff, and just show you some close-ups of the camera and how it feels in the hand, and just in general the looks of the camera as opposed to the more technical aspects and the pictures part. I am going to show you a few pictures as well and talk about that, but I'm also going to show you how the lenses look, how they feel in the hand compared to my Canon 5D Mark III that I had before, and just in general how to transition over and how it feels to transition over based on the buttons and the maneuverability and usability of the actual camera itself. So yeah, let's go inside. We're going to talk about and show you some of these features and some of the lenses. I'm going to put on the grip. I'm going to do all that stuff and hopefully have a good time. So see you guys inside. In this video, I just wanted to run through some of the physical differences creators coming from Canon or other full-frame DSLRs might want to know before buying this camera. Of course, it is always recommended to go to your local store to check out any cameras before you purchase, but we don't always have that luxury. I'm going to be making most of my comparisons using my experience with Nikon and Canon DSLRs. Starting with arguably two of the most important parts of the camera, let's start with the shutter and on and off buttons. The shutter button, while some may find mushy compared to the smaller A6000 series cameras, actually isn't too different than the buttons on Canon or Nikon cameras. It doesn't have a full bottom stop like some might prefer, but coming from the 5D Mark III or other current DSLRs, you'll feel quite at home. The on-off switch is definitely not as satisfying or reassuring as the Sony APS-C offerings, or even that Nikon switch under their shutter buttons. It is rather mushy, and I wish it had an actual clicking feeling. Instead, it kind of just slides back and forth with a soft notched resistance. The dials all over the camera are great. The aperture dial at the front of the grip is not as comfortable as the Canon variant that is usually on top next to the shutter button. However, I found that doesn't really bother me, considering I don't change aperture that often throughout my shoots. I shoot mostly portraits, and the way I work is I'll shoot a bunch of shots at 1.4 maybe, and then a bunch more at 2.8, then maybe back at 2.0. So using that dial once in a while doesn't really bother me that much. The shutter speed dial feels great and stays out of the way of bumps and knocks until you really need it. The top mode dial is in a perfect tucked away position and honestly doesn't need a lock in the first place. I never found myself accidentally changing it or hitting it like I used to on some of my other Canon cameras without locking mode dials. I don't think you need to feel like you're missing out on a premium feature without that locking dial. The rear dial, most usually known as the exposure comp dial on DSLRs, is fine. It even doubles as a directional pad. It's not as nice and large and tactile as the Canon rear dial. However, I do feel like Canon had that rear dial time tested and perfected, and I'm sure many users agree. The Sony one doesn't feel as welcoming to turn and zoom through photos like I did on my Canon. I find myself using the directional pad to switch through photos more. The buttons all over the camera are really well placed and are exactly where you need them. The whole body is super ergonomic for button presses. The addition of dedicated AF on and AEL buttons makes shooting more intuitive and adds more options for customizations as well. What I do wish though is that the buttons had more travel. As a back button focuser coming from a DSLR, I do miss that deeper button travel and tactile feedback. I love the feel of the record button, and I would go as far as to say that it's the best feeling button on the camera. It's a shame the AF on button doesn't have that same long depression and well-dampened feeling. All of the controls and buttons were really well placed, and even on a small camera body like this, they never really felt bunched up. The joystick that all Sony shooters are rejoicing about is exactly what you'd expect. It's grippy, responsive, and works exactly as you think it should. It even has a center press to add more functionality. And just touching on the functionality and versatility of these buttons, While the menu is agreeably abysmal sometimes, sitting down and really taking the time to customize the entire camera and button functions when you get the camera with your personal preferences will take away some of that stress of having to go through every menu item again anytime soon. The grip, while bigger than the second series of A7 cameras, is perfect for small to medium-sized hands. While not as beefy and confidence-inspiring as the Canon or Nikon bodies, it should suit most users better than the older counterparts. Your pinky will still definitely hang off without the vertical grip, however. Speaking of, the vertical grip is great. It fits perfectly in my hands in vertical mode, and the bulkiness of the Canon grips I've owned in the past was one of my biggest gripes. The bottoms of the Canon vertical grips were always way too wide and bulky and never really matched the comfortable feeling of the original grip. The feel of the Sony grip is perfect. It's sculpted so well to match the rest of the body and really feel like it's part of the original camera. While the buttons do feel a little more clicky and a tad cheaper than their counterparts on the main part of the body, they are very well placed and offer all the functions you would need. The leather grip on it does feel just a tiny bit lesser quality, and the battery door latch definitely could be better enforced, as it feels very breakable. The lens mount is super solid and tight, with all sorts of lenses mounted on it. Sony even made a big deal of the fact that it's more reinforced than the other bodies in the same family. Even with lenses without rubber gaskets, the connecting point between the body and the lens feels airtight. Lenses ranging from small to medium or medium large all still feel fine on the camera to me, even without the grip. I actually preferred holding larger lenses on this body as I can balance more with my left arm too. However, lenses like the 7200 are ridiculous looking and feeling on these small bodies without a vertical grip. Having the Canon 7200 and the MC11 adapter on the camera just made it feel ridiculous. I don't think I'd feel confidently balanced using the 7200 during a portrait shoot without a vertical grip. Otherwise, the larger Sony or Sigma lenses don't really bother me on the standard body alone. More trivial things like the eyepiece and screen grab points to flip out the back screen feel great. They even thought to make a beveled area in the vertical grip so you could easily grab and flip the screen from the bottom. The Hotshoe cover is a thoughtful little addition, but I feel like most people using this camera will probably take it off and leave it off to connect peripherals. Still, it's nice that they put the thought into it. One part of the camera that I do hate is the left side with the flaps for the I/O ports. While the right side has a very nicely designed and sturdy memory bay door, the left side has flimsy and thin little plastic pieces to cover the I/O ports that don't really seem like they can protect against water and moisture. While nicely matching the design language of the rest of the solid body, these doors were poorly thought out. Even the flap on the bottom that houses the charging port that Sony wants you to use will not sit well on the table when charging it. It just sticks out from the bottom, and you can't sit the camera flat on the table while plugged in. Last but not least, the EVF and back screen are fine. I don't really feel like I'm necessarily missing out on the screens from its older siblings like the A7R III and A9, but that may be because I don't have the camera bodies side by side to compare. I do feel like my 5D Mark III screen was better though. The EVF is crisp enough, but I did have a slight issue that I noticed while I was shooting. Every time I took a photo, it seemed like the color temperature in the EVF didn't match the rear panel. I couldn't really adjust the rear panel, so I actually had to set the EVF one stop warmer to get the two pictures to match as much as possible. Weird. Overall, the camera is very well designed, and my gripes with changing over from the Canon system, which I used for years, are very minimal. I do miss the built like a tank feeling of DSLRs and the reassurance of weather sealing, and the Sonys just feel a bit more exposed and breakable. But I think for the price and features, the camera is well worth the switch. So I just finished editing the whole video and I realized that I hadn't even recorded the ending or the outro yet. So I just want to let you guys know there's more content coming on this. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything else you'd like to see. I am going to be comparing the Sigma lenses on the MC11 adapter, my two Sigma lenses, and the two Canon lenses that I have, or I had, on the MC11 adapter as well to let you know how they perform. I know there's a ton of videos out there right now about the A7 III, and it's kind of hard to sift through them, but I'm trying to give you guys some content that I hadn't seen before, and I'm trying to give you content that I was looking for before I purchased the camera. So let me know if there's anything else you guys really want to see, because I know there's certain things that I want to cover, as well as anything else that you want me to cover. So thank you guys for watching. Remember to subscribe, like, dislike, whatever you guys want to do, and I'll see you guys next time. Sorry about the mess, by the way. I don't know if you can see it, but it's kind of messy. It's my bedroom, and yeah, sorry about that. See you guys next time.